It's been a week since we arrived here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Our new home, our new office, our new location for everything Reason.io and philosophy related. We came from Kingston, New York, and it took about 2 days to get out here, and we're still in the process of unpacking. That'll be going on for quite a while. We have around 90 boxes of books, being two academics living, together and merging our libraries many years ago. We've managed to accumulate even more. We've started to carry out a little bit of triage with those, pruning out some of the books, but there's still quite a lot here. What I wanted to do in this video, since people were interested with the photos and the updates that I posted on Facebook and Google+, is to talk a little bit about the trip out here, which was, to say the least, eventful. So I thought I'd also talk a bit about why we've moved back to Wisconsin and what we're looking forward to doing out here that we weren't able to do in Kingston, New York, where I've been living for about 4.5 years, and my wife Andy had been living for quite a bit longer than that. So let me talk about the trip first. I suppose you could say that the trip began with getting the moving truck to begin with, because for about 1.5 months, almost 2 months prior to the move, I had been taking things and putting them into a storage locker, preparing for the move. All those boxes of books were bit by bit packed up and then put into my Subaru, drove out to the storage area, unloaded there. We had quite a few other boxes full of all the things that make up a household, bits of furniture here and there. Fortunately, we didn't have too much, and we managed to pare down our existence in that respect quite a bit. But there was quite a bit, a 10 by 10, probably about 10 foot high storage locker, nearly filled. So the Tuesday before we actually started on the road, we went and picked up the U-Haul truck, and it was quite a truck. We originally were looking at getting a 16-foot truck, which really would have been adequate for what we were doing. And then we got a little bit concerned about that and went up to a 22-foot. But then they didn't have one, so they gave us a 26-foot truck. And a 26-foot truck is really quite a lot of vehicle to have on the road. It's a diesel. You've got a really long back on you. You've got to know what you're doing with the mirrors. And as I learned from a tow truck driver, this is part of the story down the line, there's a lot involved in that. It has air brakes. It's not the sort of thing that somebody like me who doesn't drive truck for a living really ought to be handling. In any case, we got the truck and we managed to get it home and then take it out to the storage area. We had movers come in, and that was kind of nice, watching these professional movers work, because these guys were really strong. One was 6'5", the other one was probably not quite 6 foot tall, and these guys have been working together for quite some time. And I watched them take the storage locker that had taken me 1.5 months off and on to pack into the storage area. I watched them go through that in about an hour. The tall guy could pick up 3 bankers boxes worth of books all at one time and pile them in. That was quite amazing to watch him. They didn't even break a sweat, these guys. And so it was pretty incredible. They packed everything in very tight, in part I think because they didn't realize how much we'd moved from the apartment to the storage area. So when they got to the apartment, they made pretty quick work of that as well, our furniture, the remaining boxes. They knocked all of that out, and we had a lot of room in the truck to spare. You can see that we didn't really need this gigantic 26-foot truck. So then we were wrapping things up, and we had a day to sort of get ready and pack the last remaining things. And then we got up the next morning, and there was not only did we have our truck there that we had to finish loading up, our landlord had a tree cutting service coming in that were cutting down trees. So we had to run a gauntlet with the last items and with the dogs to take them past these guys who were operating a lot of heavy equipment. We got ourselves on the road and started heading out of Kingston. The truck wasn't handling particularly well. It had been, a little slow as far as pickup went, even in the city, but there weren't any indicator lights on. So we didn't really know what was going on. So we got on the road, and we were jockeying back and forth. We got onto the interstate. I had to go through the tolls manually because you can't use an I-pass with some sort of moving truck like that. It's a whole different classification. But we were making decent time, and then a light came on, and the light was for DEF fluid. And I have no idea what this is. It turns out that it's diesel exhaust fluid. It's one of these additives that has its own special tank that is supposed to improve the exhaust so the diesel fumes aren't so damaging to the environment, which is a good thing in general. But it's a bad thing when it starts going off. So we ended up calling the Penske service line, and they were very helpful. They tried to walk me through it. Had to get to a truck stop. Buy DEF fluid. The tank was already more or less full, so I filled it up some more, and the light didn't go off. And I talked to the guy, and he said, well, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're able to drive the truck because it's something like a sensor, and it's not really going to pose any real problem with you. It won't shut you down. Or it could be a line or another type of sensor, and then in that case you'll lose power and the truck will just essentially drive at about 5 miles an hour. And as I found out later, this doesn't happen all at once. You lose your power gradually. You lose your torque, and you eventually descend to only being able to drive around 5 to 10 miles an hour. But that didn't happen for quite some time. So we're making good progress. We're driving along. The gas gauge isn't going down very much at all because it's a huge tank, and my wife got a good ways ahead of me because she's driving a car. And I would find that as I would go up hills, and remember we're driving in Pennsylvania in the mountains, so there's some pretty long grades. This truck is just not doing well on grade. So I call the Penske guy and I say, is this related to the DEF thing? He says, no, it's just the truck, These things are not designed to maintain their speed going up a long grade. So I was going down to 55 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, and I would have the pedal to the floor. So, by now I'm getting a little bit concerned because it's taking longer and longer and longer. And then about 3/4 of the way through Pennsylvania, the truck starts not only to slow down as we're going up on grade, it's also not speeding up as we go down grade, because as we would go down, I could get the truck going up to 70 miles an hour, so I could make up a little bit of the lost time. Now it's not doing that. Now the truck is starting to go just 50 miles an hour. Now it's going just 45 miles an hour. And I'm thinking, great, this must be related to the DEF thing. How far am I going to be able to get before I am totally, out of any sort of options and, driving along at 10 miles an hour on the interstate? People are passing me, semi-trucks are passing me, blaring their horns, and I see that there's a rest area up ahead, about 2 miles, so I figure, okay, I can make that. By the time that I got to that rest area and was able to turn off, that truck was going only 10 miles an hour. By that time, I had already pulled off onto the shoulder because I almost got hit by a semi that wasn't really paying attention and was barreling down on me in the right-hand lane, probably going a good 65 or 70. So it was getting pretty dicey. I managed to get to the rest area, and now it's another call to the service people. And I said, look, this truck isn't going anywhere. There's a lot of protocols that have to be observed. By now it's starting to get dark, And my wife is already, on her way to the hotel in Youngstown, which is our sort of halfway point. We're driving halfway there one day and then the rest of the way to Milwaukee the next day. So, he puts in a call and a service guy comes by in about an hour and hooks up some equipment. Nice kid. Had a good talk with him about, what he did and the software that was involved. You always learn a lot of interesting things along the way if you talk with people about this. But he couldn't make heads or tails of it, in part because the truck was actually an off-brand and the service software that he had with all of his equipment wasn't set up to do anything with that. So Penske by this time has already called a tow truck, a semi-tow truck, to come by and get the truck and to tow us all the way to Youngstown, which means going across state lines as well. So not every tow truck can do that. It takes about another hour for the tow truck to get there, and then to hook up. There's quite a bit of adventure with that, involving moving stuff from the cab of my truck over to her truck. It turns out to be this trucker lady who'd been driving truck most of her life, and had just recently decided, she didn't like doing over-the-road trucking. She liked doing towing, in part because it kept her closer to home. Pretty nice lady. A lot of stuff that we had to talk about, kids, dogs, what was going on in Pennsylvania, why I shouldn't have been driving that big truck to begin with. And anyway, she gets it hooked up, and that takes a bit of time. And it's a good hour and a half ride to Youngstown at that point. Now I'm it's been raining. I'm wet. I'm getting kind of tired of being on the road, and this is just the first day. We finally get to Youngstown, and now we have to drop the truck off. She's a little bit worried about getting it through the parking lot. Understandably so, because her rig is quite long, and the truck itself is quite long. It's got a 26-foot compartment, and then the rest of it on there. So she eventually, dumps it in the back, drops it, gets out, and prepares it for just staying in place and being towed the next day. So the question is then, what are we going to do? Penske had sent another truck by that time, a 16-foot truck, and had arranged with some movers, not professionals this time, but rather a crew that does this sort of on the side. They're driving from Pittsburgh, so everybody is driving from all over the place to make these things happen. And from 12 o'clock at night to 3 o'clock in the morning, we're there, out there with these movers off and on, watching them transfer stuff from one truck to the other truck, going from a huge 26-foot truck to a much smaller 16-foot truck. We actually got rid of a few items where we were like, look, we're not going to take this with us. We were probably going to donate that anyway. And everything is packed in as tight as can be. And these guys are not professionals, so things are kind of topsy-turvy, and there's going to be a little bit of load shifting the next day. In any case, we manage to get to bed, we get some sleep, we get on the road the next day, I think around noon maybe, and now we're driving out to Wisconsin. So now it's, we're on the second half of the trip. It's not really all downhill from here, but it's at least, getting closer to our destination. We're not going to have to stay somewhere else that's not, where we want to be. We will stay in a hotel the next night, but that's just because the apartment isn't quite ready yet. So, that day went pretty smoothly. There were a few things where it got a bit dicey in Chicago. I'm driving through, the downtown on 94, and I had some lady that managed to basically cut me off twice in her Volkswagen Beetle, just not paying attention at all, and not thinking about the fact that while, a car or a pickup truck can stop fairly quickly, it's not smart to drive out in front of a moving truck, because these things take a little bit more time to come to a stop. So there's a bit of load shifting that takes place during that time, but we managed to get to the hotel, and it turns out that it's the La Quinta in Waukesha, the very edge of Waukesha, where Waukesha meets Brookfield. Technically, I think it's Brookfield, but I always think of it as Waukesha because I used to live there, and I used to work at the Kentucky Fried Chicken, which is still there right next to the La Quinta. I would have to ride the bus from the downtown terminal of Waukesha out to Gerke's Corners, and then cross the interstate. And then actually, this is a whole different story, but I would walk back home along the interstate for a while, and then on Highway 18, about 3 miles to get back to my mother's house after work. Just silly stuff that went on during the late 80s. In any case, we get a good night's sleep, and now it's time to meet up with the other movers, the other professionals that we've got here, to go into the apartment, to handle everything, to sign the lease, to find out about the amenities. And so we go and do all that. And my wife's parents were kind enough to come out and take care of the dogs, so we don't have them underfoot. And we come out here, and it's a beautiful place. It's a great being on the road is not a lot of fun, and hotels can be quite nice sometimes, but it's not quite the same thing as being home. And here we arrive, and we go to the meet the people that we were going to take care of the paperwork with. We find out about all the different amenities involved here. We can see the wonderful view out of the window on the 6th floor where we're handling everything, and now we're getting quite excited. I think my wife was already quite excited, but now I'm a bit more excited because things are really happening. But we still have the rest of the move ahead. So we've got the truck. We go back, get the truck, park it in the loading zone. The movers arrive. They're actually from Chicago, so I talk back and forth with them a little bit about where they are in Chicago, and because my family, a lot of them still live in that area. And then it's a good 5 hours of them, more or less just unpacking the truck onto the street, and then going using the elevators to take load after load after load up here to the apartment and to drop stuff off. Took quite a bit of time. I'm outside for most of it, watching, making sure nobody comes along and just grabs our stuff. And by now, I'm not supposed to be, doing any lifting because we got these young guys to do it, which is very smart. But I don't think I would have wanted to lift anything anyway because I'm dog tired, and my back is kind of tied up in knots from all the driving and some of the lifting that I did at other times. The movers were not quite happy, the professional movers, about the job that the non-professional movers had done in the middle of the night, because they looked in and they could see things were just like all off kilter, and they're like, what is this? There was a little bit of swearing involved. But overall it wasn't too bad. There was a little bit of breakage. A few things that we lost. That's usually going to happen in any move. Most of them were fairly minor things. Fortunately, nothing that can't be replaced. And now we're here. So now it's a matter of bit by bit by bit as we continue working, because Andy and I are both working a lot of the time. Developing new routines and habits, and slowly unpacking all of these boxes, and taking things into storage, taking things out of storage. We're now at the point where the kitchen is completely set up, which is great. We've got some things, we've been looking at what to order for, as far as things for the bedroom or the living room. We're not quite sure whether I'm going to build a bunch of bookshelves or whether we're going to find some other recourse. We've already started going through the boxes of books and doing a bit of triage, deciding to take some of them to used bookstores and sell them off. The things that we don't really need, or the things that we can easily get at the library, we got ourselves into a position where we really do have too many books. You know, when you have a marriage of two academics, both of whom already have an extensive library, and both of whom are bibliophiles, and both of whom are willing to indulge the other in saying, hey, let's get some more books, you end up with a lot of books. So there's all of that. Now, I said I was going to mention a little bit why we actually moved here, and that's fairly straightforward. You know, Andy and I are both from this area. I grew up in a little town called Wales, which is quite a bit west of Milwaukee, and is still fairly countryside, although most of the surrounding area has been quite developed. But at the time that I grew up, it was really countryside. She grew up closer to Milwaukee in Brookfield, at a time when there was still a lot of green space in Brookfield, but where, you know, it's still a more urban environment. Waukesha would be sort of the dividing line between us. We went to high school together, and, you know, coming back to this area for us is really great. Andy has lived outside of Wisconsin in New York for close to 2 decades. I have been gone from Wisconsin in a variety of places, ranging from southern Illinois, which is really a whole different state from the rest of Illinois, Indiana, North Carolina, and then moving up to New York. I have been outside of Wisconsin for 20 years, and so we're really happy to be back here and moving in. Milwaukee is a happening city. There's a lot of great stuff going on here. Culturally, the food scene is just amazing. There's all sorts of you know, great museums and libraries. If we get a yen to go to some place that's a bit bigger, Chicago is just an hour and a half down the road. And I'm really looking forward to reconnecting with a lot of old friends, and even some of the family that I don't get to see that often. Andy's really happy because her family is here as well, so she gets to see them. You know, in the past it was basically holidays, and now we get to see people whenever we want to. And we have the challenge of building up sort of a new business network and a network of places to do speaking gigs and to do consulting, but we're on our old home turf. I mean, we did okay out in New York. I was never really a New Yorker. I guess Andy, you could say, is arguably a New Yorker. She certainly knew her way around there. But it's something different when you're back in your, you know, original home environment. So we're really looking forward to all the things we've got coming up here. I've already got one event scheduled for Stoic Week in November. I'll tell you more about that in the update video for November and during Stoic Week. But yeah, great experience. A little bit of hiccups during the move itself, but I do have to say the Penske people, as far as their customer service goes, pretty good, and things could have gone a lot worse. So we're really happy to be here. I'm happy, you know, Andy's happy, the dogs are happy, and I'm guessing that, you know, as we start meeting up with more and more old friends and family, they're going to be pretty happy about it too. So that is the whole story of the move up to this point.